The Haunted Mansion's queue is getting a serious refurbishment, having removed the crypts, the family plot, the fast pass area, and planning an expansion of the grounds and gardens. But this area wasn't always a construction mess, and it wasn't always an extended queue space neither. It used to be a somber cemetery with the tombstones of the family members of the mansion. How did this space evolve? And most importantly, who are the ones laying to rest in these grounds, and what was their story? Stay here to learn more in Stories from the Mansion. When the mansion was being planned, the exit passed through a small personal family graveyard. This changed with time, and when the mansion opened at Disneyland in 1969, there was a family plot on the left side of the house. The quaint space was the final resting place of Phineas Pock, Brother Claude, Rollo Rumpkin, Francis Xavier, Grandpa Mark, Cousin Victor, Wotherell R. Bender, and last but not least, Master Gracie. This marvelous shots by Greg Ziak, taken in 1969, show that this family plot used to be, and what it was, until a few months ago, part of the extended queue that goes to the left side of the mansion. Most of these names were inspired by real creators of the Haunted Mansion project. Cousin Victor was based on Big Green, the architect that oversaw the Haunted Mansion construction. Brother Claude, based on Claude Coates, responsible of the creepy and somber first half of the ride. Wotherell R. Bender, one of the responsibles in creating audio animatronic figures at WED. Rollo Rumpkin, based on Rolly Crump, creator of the Museum of the Weird. Grandpa Mark, based on Mark Davis, who was in charge of the more gag-filled second half section of the mansion. Francis Xavier, based on Xavier Atencio, show writer for the mansion, and also the voice that speaks to you when your doom buggy comes to a stop. Finally, Master Gracie, based on Imagineer Yale Gracie, who created many of the special effects in the Haunted Mansion. Phineas Pock, on the other side, well, he was not based on any Imagineer, so who was he? Well, according to some Imagineering concept art, he was one of the singing busts. Now, only 9 months after the mansion opened, the original tombstones were removed from their resting place. Xavier Atencio wanted the original ones to go to their owners, and replicas of the originals were created. These replicas were placed in the berm, except for Rollo Rumpkins, whose original tombstone was placed inside the graveyard. Mark Davis used to have his in front of his desk until he grew tired of looking at his own tombstone every day, and Xavier placed it on his backyard where it supposedly still sits today. Master Gracie's and Brother Claude's were not to be seen for a long while. It's important to note that this berm did not have any sort of fence dividing it from the mansion, making us think that those tombs were part of the property of the mansion, different from the old tombstones from the public graveyard next to the house. We have to remember, the Haunted Mansion is not part of the graveyard. The graveyard is a public place that is just right next, or behind, if you will, the Haunted Mansion. We have to make a distinction between the family plot with more recent tombstones and family members from a mansion, and the public graveyard with older tombstones and ghosts from many parts of the world and ages. Sometime around the 2000s, the berm tombstones disappeared. But not forever, since in 2016 they returned with one Haunted Mansion holiday makeover. This time, though, with the two main differences. More family members and the fence indicating they might be part of the public graveyard instead of the grounds of the mansion, thus estranging them from the mansion's family. I myself think that the fence makes no difference, and they are still family members from the last inhabitants of the mansion. Regardless, the new members of the family plot were the following: Brother Claude, which was a recreation of the Brother Claude tombstone; Cam Irvine, a tribute for Imagineer Kim Irvine; M. Dibjib, a tribute to Michael Dabrowski; Esteban Pine for Steve Pinetto; Julia Shrub, a tribute to Julia Bush, a Disneyland landscaper; and Bradford Clemente, tribute to Brad Clements, Disney show designer. As for the stories of the fictional characters in those tombstones, are there any stories? Well, let's find out. Francis Xavier was a pirate that was such a big fan of Bluebeard that when he was in France, he took his script and all of the Bluebeard's wives back to the Hudson Estate House. That is why when you leave the Hudson Estate House and you walk through the exit, you may find Bluebeard and his dead wives buried on a crypt on your left side. Now, Phineas Puck was one of the singing busts. Master Gracie, whose story we've discussed previously here, and who is supposed to be the young man in the portrait. As for the others, there is no official backstory or ghost gallery story. It's just us looking at some sort of post-mortem credits of people who have worked in the haunted mansion, and that's it. So, I please ask you, make some stories for these ghosts from the mansion and write them down in the comment section. I'd like to know where these buddies come from. I can't help but have some sad thoughts for the refurbishment of this area. The foreboding ambience created by the graveyard, which is very much embraced at Tokyo, Florida, and Paris, will now disappear. Apparently for good, since the grounds will now be a garden, not a family plot. I see no reference in the concept art of the tombs being back on the berm or just anywhere else. We might as well say farewell to these tombstones again, since, as we've seen, they were never there for a long time and were constantly moved to accommodate for the ever-growing queue since 1970. You know what the new expansion of the queue will be about, right? Well, it's all about, according to Disney experts, building a new elevator for handicapped guests, which is great. But what does that have to do with removing the graveyard and making it a garden? I have my hopes high that this garden will at least have some foreboding ambience like Phantom Manors or like Tower of Terror's queue. Perhaps an abandoned place may give us a little bit of the sense of what we're about to see inside the haunted mansion. As for the tombstones, I can already think of where they will be going. They will be sold in eBay or in some sort of other auction for thousands of dollars. So if you have the money, get ready to buy some tombstones. But what do you think? Are the new changes coming exciting, or would you rather have an expanded graveyard? Let me know what you think.